Most people do not notice the trap when it begins. In fact, for many Americans, it does not feel like a trap at all. They spend years, sometimes decades, doing exactly what they were told to do. They contribute to a retirement account, they watch the balance grow. And with each statement that shows a higher number, they feel a little more secure about the future. Over time, that balance becomes more than savings. It starts to represent freedom, stability, and the belief that retirement is already taking shape. But what if the most important question is not how much money is inside the account? What if the real question is what happens when that money finally needs to be used? This is one of the most overlooked financial pressures facing many retirees today. It is often called the retirement tax bomb. Despite the dramatic name, this is not a conspiracy. It is not evidence that retirement accounts are bad, and it is not a warning against saving. The real issue is much simpler. Many people spend years learning how to build a retirement account, yet far less time thinking about how they will eventually take money out of it. This is where the fault line begins. For most workers, a traditional 401k feels straightforward. Money goes in during working years. The account grows over time. Retirement planning becomes a steady effort to reach a target number. The process feels logical because the balance is easy to track. Every statement shows progress. Every milestone feels measurable. As a result, many households naturally focus on accumulation. They focus on reaching a certain balance and whether that balance is growing fast enough. What often receives far less attention is what happens after retirement begins. The reason this matters is that a traditional 401k is tax-deferred, not tax-free. That distinction may sound small, but it changes the conversation entirely. During working years, the account is viewed primarily as a savings vehicle. During retirement, it becomes an income source. And income brings a different set of considerations. The challenge is not necessarily any single withdrawal. The challenge is everything that withdrawal can interact with. This is where many retirement plans begin to encounter unexpected pressure. At first glance, a retiree may look at an account balance and assume that balance represents future spending power. The math appears straightforward. If the account contains a certain amount of money, that money should eventually be available to support retirement. But retirement rarely works that cleanly. What looks manageable on paper can become more complicated in real life because withdrawals do not exist in isolation. Instead, they can interact with other parts of a retiree's financial life. According to the research brief, traditional 401k withdrawals can interact with Social Security taxation. They can interact with Medicare IRMAA. They can interact with required minimum distributions, commonly known as RMDs. State taxes may also enter the picture. And throughout all of it, retirees still face the reality of everyday living costs. None of these factors necessarily creates a crisis on its own. The issue is that they can stack, and stacking is the idea many people miss. When people hear the phrase retirement tax bomb, they often picture one large event, one sudden bill, one dramatic surprise. In reality, the situation is often better understood as a layering process. A withdrawal is made. That withdrawal may affect taxes. It may interact with Social Security taxation. It may have implications related to Medicare costs through IRMAA. RMD requirements may enter the picture. State taxes may apply. Meanwhile, housing costs, healthcare expenses, insurance payments, food, transportation, and other daily needs continue to demand attention. Each layer may seem manageable on its own. Together, they can create a very different outcome than many retirees expected. The problem is not always obvious at first. For many households, the pressure starts quietly. It develops gradually rather than all at once, which is exactly what makes it so easy to overlook. A retiree may believe the planning phase is complete because the savings goal has been reached. The account balance appears healthy. Years of disciplined saving seem to have paid off, and in many cases, they have. But reaching retirement with savings and reaching retirement with a distribution strategy aren't necessarily the same thing. One focuses on building assets, the other focuses on turning those assets into usable income. That difference matters because retirement is ultimately lived through monthly cash flow, not account statements. An account can appear strong while spending flexibility becomes more constrained than expected. And the danger is not always the first bill. It is what happens when the bills start stacking together. When multiple obligations begin interacting, choices can become more limited. Unexpected expenses become harder to absorb. Adjustments become more difficult. Financial decisions that once felt simple require more planning. None of this means retirement is destined to become a struggle. Nor does it mean traditional 401ks are flawed. In fact, the research brief makes an important distinction. Traditional 401ks can be powerful savings tools. The warning is not about saving money in a 401k. The warning is about assuming that the account balance is the same as spendable money. That assumption is where misunderstandings often begin. And it is frequently the people who feel most prepared who are vulnerable to making it. After all, if someone has spent decades saving responsibly, it is only natural to focus on the final balance. That number represents years of work, sacrifice, and planning. But retirement income planning requires a second question, not just how much money exists, but how that money will be accessed, how it will interact with taxes, how it will affect other retirement income sources, and how it will support everyday life over time. That shift in perspective moves the conversation from accumulation to coordination. Instead of viewing retirement planning as a single objective, it becomes a process of managing multiple moving parts. Social Security, Medicare-related costs, required distributions, state taxes, living expenses, retirement withdrawals. The challenge is understanding how those pieces fit together, because retirement is rarely defined by one financial decision. It is defined by how many decisions connect to one another. This is why the retirement tax bomb is often better understood as a stacking problem rather than simply a tax problem. The phrase itself can create the impression that a single hidden force is waiting to undermine retirement. The research brief suggests something much more practical. The pressure comes from interactions. One factor affects another, several costs overlap, several obligations arrive at the same time, and a retiree who planned only for the account balance may discover that retirement requires planning for much more than the balance itself. Fortunately, awareness changes the equation. This is not about panic, it is about seeing the problem earlier. It means recognizing that retirement planning is not complete simply because an account has grown. It means understanding that tax-deferred does not mean tax-free. And it means remembering that retirement success is measured by sustainable spending power, not simply accumulated assets. The goal is not to fear retirement accounts. The goal is to understand them fully, because a traditional 401k can still be an extremely valuable tool. For many Americans, it remains one of the most important retirement savings vehicles available. The fault line appears only when expectations and reality begin to separate, when a balance is mistaken for spendable income, when withdrawals are treated as simple transactions instead of part of a larger financial system, when future interactions are ignored because all attention remains focused on the headline number. Retirement planning is often described as a journey toward a destination, but retirement actually unfolds in two phases: the years spent building and the years spent drawing down. Many people devote enormous energy to the first phase. Far fewer appreciate the complexity of the second. Yet the second phase is where retirement is actually lived. The lesson here is not that retirement is becoming impossible. It is not that traditional 401ks should be avoided. And it is not that every retiree faces the same outcome. The lesson is simpler. A retirement account balance tells only part of the story. The rest of the story begins when withdrawals start. That is where taxes, Medicare-related costs, Social Security interactions, required distributions, state taxes, and everyday expenses can begin to overlap. For some households, those layers may remain manageable. For others, they may create more pressure than expected. Either way, the most important step is understanding that the layers exist. Because what looks secure on paper can feel very different once real-world financial decisions begin. And that is the true warning behind the retirement tax bomb. Not that retirement savings are dangerous, but that retirement planning does not end when the money is saved. It continues when the money is used. And for many Americans, understanding that difference may be one of the most valuable retirement decisions they ever make.